2, 1. Are you live? Are you live? What are you doing? There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Kingdom of Honor. I'm your host, Sandman Shane Sabunia, along with my good buddy, the Honorable Jeff. And what a week of wrestling we had this week, Jeff.
Oh, I don't know. This show's just a train wreck.
Is it? Is it really?
For those of you that tried to join us for our review of Dark Phoenix, we will have that up later on Patreon, and if I can figure out how to turn it into a movie, I'll upload it back to YouTube as well. But yeah, what a nightmare. But hey, we're back for our second show of the day, and uh, yeah, a hell of a week in wrestling. Holy crap, was there a lot going on?
There was. And so let's just dial back all the way to the beginning of the wrestling week on
Before
Monday of
we
last week.
Before
Yeah?
we get into that, I want to get your uh, input here on a couple of breaking stories that literally were hot off the presses earlier this morning.
Okay.
One of them is Dalton Castle. He's a free agent, no longer under contract with Ring of Honor. Sounds like he is putting out feelers to possibly move to a different company. You think that's a smart move? You think
No.
anybody other than Ring of Honor can accurately keep Dalton Castle a superstar?
Dalton Castle has seemed lost to me ever since he lost the original version of The Boys.
Yep.
He did not get over well as a heel. That was dropped very quickly. Um, and when Final Battle was coming up, and he was there as a ring announcer. First, I was like, "Wait, who's that announcing with him?" Oh, it's Dalton Castle. And then when he had his match added, it didn't really feel like there was any big loss that he wasn't on the card. So, yeah, he's a former ROH World Champion. Yes, he's good in the ring. But is he somebody that I think is going to pop a number? No. Is he somebody I think is going to really turn heads? No. Is he somebody that I even really care about whether he's still in Ring of Honor or not? No, he's not. So there was a time when I really enjoyed Dalton Castle stuff and what he did, and I look forward to seeing him. And I think a lot of that was just that he was in a feud with Silas Young. I'm not
Even
I've never really been that big of a Dalton Castle guy, I guess. And so to me, him being a free agent, I mean, maybe it'll give him a chance to go somewhere else, get a new coat of paint on him, and maybe he will be somebody pretty impressive. But I don't look at that guy and think superstar or even, somebody that I really care that much is on my screen or not.
and see, I get where you're coming from. I personally liked him better when he was a heel with the original member of the Boys before his Silas Young feud and before his Ring of Honor or his title run.
Okay.
I enjoyed his title run. I thought that he did a great job. But you're right, when he came back and turned heel on the Boys, and then came out with New Boys, and then tried to be a heel for a little bit against Roosh, and that clearly didn't work because they just pimped him out to Roosh. It just like you said, he's been lost. He's been lost for the last couple of years. Do I think he's got the wrestling ability to go somewhere else and do well? I think so, but I think he would drastically have to change his character. Like, I think that if he goes anywhere else, he would be somebody completely brand new, not Dalton Castle anymore.
And maybe that'd be the best thing for him. That's why I was saying
Probably.
maybe a fresh coat of paint would change things. I mean, and it's not that I don't think he can have great matches with people. I mean, he's one of those, but he's one of the guys when you get in the ring and you see and you watch him wrestle, you're like, oh yeah, this guy can really go.
Right.
He's not a guy you really think about at the top of your head of being a great wrestler. But I know what I think, like, could he have great matches against Phoenix and Pentagon and Kenny Omega and Colt Cabana and pretty much anybody? Yes, he
Right.
could, but I guess looking at him like looking to get a big money deal elsewhere, I really think ROH is going to give him the best deal he's going to get anywhere.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
he,
unless it's a situation where he wants to bet on himself and be like, okay, I can go somewhere else for a year or two. I can show them my worth. I can become a star there, and then I can get my big money next contract.
right. And I'm kind of there with you too. I just think even if he stays in Ring of Honor, I think it's time for persona change. I think he needs to get away from the boys. He needs to get away um, from what he's doing, but I don't know how good of a character he'd be outside of that. So fresh coat of paint is probably his best opportunity. Maybe a run in NXT, they remake him like they did Punishment Martinez, because that sure
Yeah,
as hell worked for Punishment or Damian Priest.
it did.
Now, the other thing we have here is there's been this whole thing about Jay White. Is he done with his contract? Is he moving on? There's rumors going across the board where yes, his contract is expired and he's fielding offers from other people. But then this interesting bit of news came out. When AEW first started up, they reached out to Jay White and wanted him to come along with them, like so many other wrestlers did from NJPW and everything. And he told um, Kenny and Cody and the Bucks that he was under a 7-year contract with NJPW. Well, if that's the case, he still has what, 5 years to go?
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out what is happening here. Do you think that he's done and he's moving on, or do you think this is just a work?
Well, when I know you said you didn't watch New Year's Dash, but during New Year's Dash, Kevin Kelly was talking about that, and he wasn't really talking about that, but he was saying that that Jay White appears to be done with pro wrestling in general. So I don't think it's a situation where he can jump to another company. On the other hand, he also did say that he was contractually obligated to appear at New Year's Dash, so they can make him appear there, but then he's not coming back after that. So I really don't know how that contract is structured. If it's structured like, there's like a, like maybe like a 3-year deal with an option to renew for four or something, or, but then there's like an exclusivity clause, because it certainly didn't sound like from the way that Jay White phrased that New Japan had him required to do anything other after that, unless that was just because that was the last thing he was actually booked for, um, and that's what he meant. Um, but the way Kevin Kelly was talking about it is that Jay White was not that he was going to get another promotion or that he was leaving the company, but that it sounded like he was actually, even at the ripe old age of 28, he was done with pro wrestling because he just couldn't deal with it anymore.
So he was going to Andrew Luck it um,
Yes,
and just
yes.
retire during his prime.
Right, or the comparison that was made was Michael Jordan's original retirement when he was on top of the world, had just won 3 straight world championships and retired to go play baseball.
Yeah, but
You
that
know,
was more of a got forced to go play baseball because he had a gambling addiction and whatever.
you
Um,
know what I mean, though.
yeah, yeah. But I don't I don't know. He's so great at what he does. There's just certain people that I just can't see thriving in another promotion the way that they thrive where they're at. And Jay White's one of those. I think he's talented. I think he's probably one of the best heels in the business, but I can't see him being the mega star that he is anywhere else.
Do you know what Dave Meltzer said about him on Tuesday?
What's that?
I know you don't. I know you're always like fuck Dave Meltzer,
Pretty much,
but
yeah.
but he actually said that Jay White is the best wrestler on the world, and he can't imagine anybody playing the role that Jay White plays, um, or anybody playing a role the way Jay White plays, um, better than Jay White plays. Basically, he's saying like Jay White plays a character better than anybody in the history of professional wrestling.
So he and I are actually on the same page with this.
Yes,
Me and Meltzer agree.
yes.
Holy crap. No, I agree with that.
He listed, and he basically said like Jay White is the reason why the main event of January 5th was such a great match, which is kind of the way you said too.
hmm
But yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I don't know that anybody could fulfill that role that Jay White does, and I don't know that Jay White could fulfill that role in another company. I just don't. I think he is born and bred to play that role and to play it in NJPW because I think NJPW is the only place where he's given the freedom to be that guy.
That said, if he were able to come, if he were coming in and playing that role, and I love the way, I love what he's done, especially. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Jay White, but even as he's in ROH as a babyface, I really enjoyed his stuff. But I think what he's done since, especially since his return from the pandemic shutdowns, has been just amazing. The way he's egging on the crowd, trying to get them to cheer, and he's mocking them for clapping, and
Hmm.
and all that stuff has just been outstanding. But
He's the
and
best heel in the business. I've been saying that for 2 years.
he is. And that's why I think it'd be so interesting if he actually were to come into AEW and interact with this new version of the Elite that started on Wednesday. And we'll have to see where that goes. But to see him in the same ring with like Kenny Omega and Don Callis with those three heel personalities interacting with each other, I think would be
Oh my
very very
God, that
interesting.
would be. But that's what I'm saying. The only place that would probably that he probably would succeed would be AEW. And WWF, let's face it, or WWE, I'm sorry, they would change him too much. He doesn't have the quality of opponents to work with in a place like Impact. Maybe Ring of Honor, depending on where they put him, but I don't see him succeeding with Ring of Honor to the level that he is with NJPW. AEW might be the only option, but the one thing that I have been disappointed with AEW about since day one is their stop and start on everybody that's not the big four. It just seems like they will get hot on somebody for a little bit and then that person just ends up in the back. And it just I don't I think his best place to stay is NJPW. I think his best place to succeed is NJPW, and I think if he stays there someday, he will go down as one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, but the question is whether he really wants
Has his
to
heart into it, yeah.
really has really has his heart into it.
Because I mean, if you think about it, he was pushed to the moon last year, and then all of a sudden, Coda comes in, then Coda's the big, or in 2018, 19, I'm sorry, 18, whenever it was, and then Coda comes in, and he was the big dog, and then it just, I, I
I, I
kind
don't I
of
don't
get
I
what
don't
he
I don't know if
was,
he was pushed to the moon in 2018 because I mean he got the win over Okada and then a month later he wins the heavyweight championships from Tanahashi, but then he also loses to Okada and he never even got a chance to successfully defend that title one time.
yeah, true.
So I think that NJPW has done a lot of stop and start on White as well. It's just that, but I also think that that's just what NJPW does when they're pushing a star to the very top. I mean, look how long it's like you said, it took Kota Ibushi two straight years of solid booking to finally win the double gold.
And yeah, and you know my feelings on that. I felt like last year was a better year to pull the trigger, but
But they
um,
don't do that.
no,
They don't give anybody their first shot at the on the big stage for that championship. Nobody ever wins it
except Brock Lesnar.
except Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. And that was pounded home during Wrestle Kingdom this year. The other big news is that WrestleMania 24 was removed off of the WWE network. No explanation given, just taken off. And the reason why that's big news is because that was Bret Hart, or that was Ric Flair's last match against Shawn Michaels.
WrestleMania 24 is no longer on the WWE Network.
Nope, it was removed, I believe, yesterday. No explanation for it. What I've been hearing is that people think it's because of the music that Floyd Mayweather used. That was the match with Mayweather versus Big Show, and he used a 50 Cent song. And 50 Cent tried to sue the WWE back in 2010 about it and lost. But I wonder if that might be something where there's another dispute about the song, and they just took it down briefly to edit that part out, like kind of like Ring of Honor does,
Okay,
um,
that makes
or
sense.
or if you know, or what's going on. But that's the only reason I can think of that they would do that. I hope it's something brief because I've gone back and watched that Shawn Michaels Ric Flair match a number of times, and I wouldn't mind seeing it again.
I'm a I and I'm a huge fan of the Undertaker versus Edge main event of that show as well.
Yeah, and that was a triple threat with Orton, Cena, and was it Triple H?
It was, but the Edge versus Undertaker match is absolutely fantastic, and
Yeah,
that's just
true.
it's just an incredible match where Edge counters every single thing the Undertaker does, and then finally the match ends with the Undertaker countering Edge's spear into the Hell's Gate. So
Right,
that to me is the closest the Undertaker ever came to losing the streak until, of course, the streak ended.
right, right.
You know that was a night where it really felt like, because Edge was also undefeated at WrestleMania at that point, so that was a match that it really felt like Undertaker might be passing on his streak to somebody that mattered,
Yeah,
because
true.
because Brock Lesnar. I mean, I guess in the history, in the scope of things, Brock Lesnar does matter, but him beating the streak did not matter.
Him beating the streak when he did was about 10 years past its time. I mean, I know there was original plans about Bob Brock losing the streak back in '02, '03, '04, but then he quit and went to MMA.
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
think I and you and I talked about this before, but I really think the streak should have ended the year before when Punk faced him, but I know Punk also said he didn't want to end the streak.
well, yeah, because Punk probably saw the writing on the wall. He was what, out of wrestling less than a year later. And why give that kind of thing to somebody who's not going to be around?
Um, I actually I thought it was more that Undertaker, that Punk respected the Undertaker too much to want to beat us to
Oh,
end his streak.
fair enough.
But
So we had six big shows this week. One of them,
6? Oh yeah,
six.
yeah,
One of
one we haven't watched, not watched yet, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I did I saw one of the matches. Um, actually, no, I didn't. I saw a review of one of the matches where it showed highlights. And of course, I don't care about endings, so whatever. Um, I need to rediscover the password so I can see it on the Impact Plus app. But there were two.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out and send it to you, because I also had something where I tried to watch Impact Plus when I was when Kenny appeared on there, and there was something like where I wasn't signed up for it anymore, and I have no idea how that happened. So
Well,
I gotta make sure it's the same stuff for
yeah,
you.
that happened with me in the Ring of Honor app too. They
Yeah.
extended or gave me a 3 free months and then didn't renew, and it was just a nightmare. But the two
Oh,
big,
that you're right. That might be what happened with my Impact Plus, because I remember how they were doing that thing where if you bought a pay-per-view, you got a certain number of months free.
mhm.
Maybe that is what happened with mine too. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, what happened here is, of course, there was a great
Don't spo-
tournament.
don't spoil it for me.
I'm not. There was a great
There was a there
tournament
was there was a
for
tournament.
the X Cup.
Oh, okay.
A couple of our favorites are in the tournament. I'll leave it at
Like
that.
Chris Bay. Bleh.
Well, Ace Austin for one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and then there was a Moose versus uh, um,
And of course you said Ace
Willie
Austin. I thought Austin Aries right away. Oh well.
Yeah, there was a Moose for. Oh, every time I see his name, I think the same thing. But and
Yeah.
then there was a Moose versus Willie Mack I Quit match over
Oh,
the
interesting.
yeah, which
For the TNA title.
yeah, but it had a really odd finish. Like I'm still kind of scratching my head over the finish.
Okay. Well,
So
I'll have to watch the next couple of days, and we can talk about it next time.
yeah, I think we definitely need to because it was just odd. Um, but okay, so on to the four big shows that we actually did watch.
Okay. So let's go back to my original question. What did you think of Wrestle Kingdom Night One? Just
I
overall
thought
impressions.
I thought it was good, not great. Um, when the two best matches on the night were one that were both ones where the outcome was not what I wanted, and I didn't like the lead up to the outcomes. That was a downer, and that I'm talking about both the heavyweight tag match and then of course the main event. Um,
Okay.
and then my favorite match ended up being El Phantasmo and Takahashi, but like you said, it felt like they were both holding back a little bit. Like they were trying to wait for a bigger show or maybe or a bigger spot or something, or maybe Takahashi was holding back because he didn't want to outshine his night two performance. I don't know, but yeah, when I went back and watched it, because I thought it was fantastic at first. And then after you and I talked about it a couple days ago, I went back and rewatched it, and I was like, oh, this isn't as great as I thought it was.
Um, I thought last year when they did this 2 night event, it was amazing. I thought both nights felt like Wrestle Kingdom, and they both felt like huge shows, and I was really into everything happening on both those nights. This time around, it felt like things were like you had mentioned last week when we previewed it, really stretched out, and really things here should not have been separated. They were the way they were last year. Night one did not feel like a Wrestle Kingdom show. It was a good show, but it did not feel like Wrestle Kingdom at all.
Agreed.
And it felt like, maybe like one of the like a power struggle show or maybe a new beginning show, but it definitely did not feel like Wrestle Kingdom.
It felt like a big show, but not a Wrestle Kingdom.
Exactly.
And I think part of it was because of those two filler matches.
Um, which ones are you? I know you mean Tanahashi and Okan. What was the other filler match you're talking about?
The uh, I can't think of it now. Ah, damn
The
it.
Rambo?
Um, why can't I think of it now?
Is it the Rambo you're talking about?
No, that was a pre-show, so and I mean that was dumb too. Come on, Toru Yano gets in and doesn't even have to get into the ring to win.
Yeah.
The Kenta versus Kojima, to me that felt like a
Oh, right.
filler
Yeah.
match. I mean, Kenta, yeah, he should have been there, but should have been somebody other than Kojima.
Yeah. We had talked about last week that that we were surprised that it wasn't Juice Robinson in that spot, but I didn't know at the time that Juice was injured.
Yeah,
And they mentioned that on the broadcast. But if it wasn't going to be Juice, why the hell wasn't it? Then why wasn't it Juice's partner? Why wasn't it David
Dave
Finlay?
Finley or somebody, or somebody with a little. It, it just, I don't know
A guy that
why.
why wasn't it a guy from the modern era that you really felt like had a chance to beat Kenta?
Exactly. And the whole thing of it was is they kept bringing up Jushin Thunder Liger retiring, and then how all the other old guard are starting to get to the point where they're going to retire, and this is Kojima's last chance, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Um, but the like I said, the I felt like the two best matches, the outcome of those matches were kind of a letdown for me, and that was God against the Techers. Can you put that in the sync, please? God against the Dangerous Techers, and then Ibushi versus Naito.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with those sentiments. I mean, well, not Ibushi versus Naito. I wouldn't say that. I like, I obviously like Kota Ibushi a lot more than you do these days. but,
Well, it's
but,
not
but,
it's not that I
but
don't like Kota Ibushi. It's just he's got some drawbacks that are really shining right now, and I don't feel like. And I get it. It's NJPW's way, 2 years, blah 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 blah. But I just felt like he was on such a roll last year, and then after losing twice. I never felt like, even though he won, the G1, he ended up losing the shot to Jay White less than a month later. So it just felt like any momentum that Kota had was gone.
yeah, I, I I see what you're saying, but I also think that we got that story now where he did have those 2 years of we had the disappointment last year at Wrestle Kingdom where he lost both of his matches, and then he had the shining moment where he beat Sonata to become G1 winner for 2 years in a row, and then he has the disappointment losing it a month later to Jay White, but now he's able to triumph and overcome those disappointments to not only win the double gold on night one, but then vanquish Jay White on night two as well.
Yeah, it didn't seem to me it just wasn't as fulfilling as I think it could have been. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's the fact that I personally Naito and White are two of my favorites in the company, and Coda is, I like Coda, but he's just not one of my favorites. I don't, maybe I was disappointed. Maybe it was, I just didn't feel like Ibushi was in that spot where he should have even wrestled for the title because he lost his shot, but then not only wrestle for the title, but win 2 nights. It just to me, I didn't feel fulfilled with the story.
Yeah, and I think that part of this is might also just be that you've watched NJPW now regularly for like 4 years,
Right.
and probably and really started like 6 years ago with Wrestle Kingdom 9, whereas you've been an American pro wrestling fan for 45, 46 years. And
Right.
so, and so, you're used to the American way of storytelling. So maybe another 10 years, a story like this would have worked better for you than it would have, than like a rising star. An example I would make is, Drew McIntyre coming out of nowhere to win the Royal Rumble and then beating Brock Lesnar for WrestleMania probably worked a lot better for you
No, because I
than,
there
than,
was a
than this, than this did.
there was a Drew McIntyre story involved. It wasn't just him coming out of nowhere to win the Rumble. It was him kind of building up to that badass moment through, with his partnership with Dolph Ziggler and all that stuff. Um, I, I mean, I get the Kota Ibushi story, but there's just parts of the story that kind of make me feel like, why was he even there? Much less the fact that he won it. If they had stuck with the G1 story and he'd gone in and he had was the G1 winner, I would have been frustrated because I felt like it just wasn't the right time. But ultimately, I would have been like, okay, yeah, he's earned a spot. He came back, he beat Jay White to retain the title. He, had a match with whoever and beat them to retain the title, and now he's in this spot. I would have been a little more okay with it, but the fact that he lost his chance but was still given his chance anyway
You
was
know,
the part that frustrated me.
Yeah, because really let's take this another step. Let's compare and contrast this what actually happened with let's do an alternate reality, right?
Okay.
Let's do an alternate reality where there's only one Wrestle Kingdom night, okay? Night one, where we don't have Wrestle Kingdom night one, night two. We just have the usual 9 or 10 match card on Wrestle Kingdom on January 4th.
Right.
And let's compare and contrast who actually won the G1 with who his opponent was that night. So then we've got a situation where Naito gets betrayed by Evil after Sonata gets betrayed by Evil, and he wins the world, and Evil still wins the world championship from Naito by cheating. He still loses it back to Naito um, at Jingo Stadium. But now you've got Sonata coming in, and you got now the compare and contrast between Evil cheating to beat Naito and going behind him back and betraying him. And you've got Sonata doing it completely straightforward, winning G1, doing everything the right way, and then he has an amazing match with Naito and walks away with the championship. Which one's a better story?
Personally, I like the Sonata story better.
Yeah, and so do I. So I mean, to me, like that alternate reality version of it, where you don't have to worry about having a night one and a night two. You've only got the one night, and you've got two different LIJ variations within the same like 6 month period. Works a lot better for me as a storyteller and even as a story reader than this did.
Yeah, I just didn't like the way that this felt. I didn't like the fact that it felt it to me it felt forced. It felt like we're gonna give Coda this spot even though he may not technically deserve this spot. If they had figured out a way to make it so that he deserved that spot, I would have felt about it differently. But I didn't feel like he even should have been in that match because he lost his chance. It took away a lot of the G1 briefcase feel. Like you go out there and you earn that title shot and you defend that title shot. And if you lose that title shot, you lose the title shot. You don't just get the damn title shot again anyway. You lose it. You lost it. You lost your title shot.
But okay, so let's also look at how this impacts Jay White's character as well, because I mean now he might have quit. We don't know. He might have actually quit forever, or at least for a year or two. Maybe a few months. Who knows? But I mean, maybe he's gone. Right? Maybe he's
Right.
gone for now. Um, But let's say that he wasn't gone, and so let's say the way this actually impacts his character, because you can look at it this way, that Jay White like really outsmarted himself, right?
Right.
Where he came out and he said, I won the shot for the briefcase, but I don't want to wrestle on January 4th. I'll wait. I'll wait and wrestle on January 5th, and you can do whatever you want on January 4th.
Right.
Well, now he put himself in a situation where he's unsure who's going to be facing the next night, and he set himself up to be able to face Naito for the championship. Instead, he's got to face Ibushi, who he's already wronged 3 times.
Right.
So if you look at it that way, it's also a situation where Jay White, put himself in a situation where that he really shouldn't have been in. Whereas if he had just taken the usual January 4th title match and faced off against his own, the guy he was supposed to face, then maybe he is the IWGP Heavyweight Champion right now.
True. Another thing too that really kind of got me, and I don't know how to. What is going on with my stupid computer now? There.
I don't know.
It's just everything late today
I,
has just
I,
been a
I,
freaking nightmare.
so I understand where you're coming from with Ibushi, but at the same time, I really think you have to look at it, from every character's perspective here, where
Fair enough.
Ibushi had this soaring crowning moment. Naito's looking, and and the Naito has to look at it like, well, why the hell did I give Ibushi that shot? Why was I so intent on proving what a great champion I am? Why didn't I just face White? And you got to look at White and thinking, why the fuck did I give Ibushi another shot to beat me?
Right.
you know.
Yeah, it just, yeah, I get it. But when you were talking about that, I was thinking, shh, guys, come on. When when Jay White was talking about why he doesn't, or why he's quitting, he was talking about how he's disrespected. And I was thinking
By
back
who?
about by NJPW,
Okay.
by the decision makers in NJPW, and I'm sitting there thinking, how does that make sense? You're in pretty much every high profile storyline, you're in every high profile match. How does it make sense that NJPW is disrespecting you? If he had said the fans, that would have made a little more sense.
Well, it's kind of the Punk argument all over again, isn't it? Where CM Punk, you could say the same thing about, where I felt like he was disrespected because I felt like he was in a spot where he should have been, the biggest thing since Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Right.
and he didn't end up being that way because of the way they booked him. But you can't argue he wasn't, you can't argue that he didn't have the longest reign in a dozen years. You can't argue that he wasn't in every high profile match, because he pretty much was, But what you could argue was, yeah, I'm in all these high profile matches, but do I ever win them? Do I ever get any momentum built from them? Because even when he was the WWE champion, a lot of times he was, second booked on the card behind John Cena's matches. Or he would face off against Brock Lesnar or The Undertaker or The Rock, but he never beat any of them. So I mean, when you look at it that way, and that's where I kind of look back at what happened in 2018, and I think, well, why the fuck did you have him win the world title or the heavyweight title for a month and then drop it to Okada at Supercard? Yeah, you gave him the main event of Supercard, sure, but you didn't even give him one successful title defense, not one.
No, and I
You
and
know,
I
so
do
so so
agree,
so so, so I think if I was him, I would have been pretty soured on by that experience.
and I agree with that. I do. I feel like him saying that NJPW is disrespecting him though when he's 28.
Yeah, that's the other aspect I was going to add is, but on the other hand, he's also 28 years old,
Right.
and he's only like what 3 years? Yeah, he's exactly 3 years actually into his time as a veteran or as a major player in NJPW, because he
Right.
returned at 3 years ago at Wrestle Kingdom to face Tanahashi. So
Right.
you
And
so it's tough to argue that Jay White has been mistreated by NJPW, whereas I think the argument is there for Punk. I don't think necessarily it is for Jay White, because all of these are just stepping stones and building blocks, making him one of their pillars in a year or two down the road.
and not only that, but he when was the last time a guy who wasn't an established star walked into a company and within 3 years has the resume Jay White has. He's the leader of Bullet Club. He beat Okada at Wrestle Kingdom. He's been the heavyweight champion. There's so much that he has done in the 3 years at only 28 years old that it's hard to say, oh, yeah, you're being disrespected by this company. When most people within their first 3 years are fighting over the Never Championship or the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, he's a multi-time champion.
Yeah,
He's,
at four Wrestle Kingdoms, he lost to Tanahashi, he beat Okada, he lost to Naito, he beat Ibushi, and he lost to Ibushi. I mean, and that's four Wrestle Kingdoms in 3 years, right? Because it's 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. So I mean when you look at that, yeah, how exact or no, let's do I have that right? Yeah. Anyway, how exactly is that who else has that resume at Wrestle Kingdom
yeah, it's just
other than maybe Okada?
that's why I'm thinking that, for him to use the, well, NJPW is disrespecting me line just feels hollow. It feels like it's starting to feel more storyline than anything else because it's just how high profile Jay White is in NJPW. The fact that, he's booked, pandemic aside, he's been booked at the top of every card since he returned to NJPW 3 years ago.
He has, and also looking at this, like last week we talked about this, and you wanted Jay White to win the heavyweight championship,
Yeah,
but you didn't think he was going to.
no,
You
no,
know,
no.
we both thought after last week that the most likely scenario was that Naito was going to win both matches.
Yep.
And that didn't happen. But if you had asked me like who's walking out with the championship, Naito, Ibushi, or Jay White, White would have been my third choice. you know, so I mean, I mean clearly not yours, but he would have been my third
Right,
choice.
right.
So I don't think you can look at this and say, well, Jay White was disrespected because and he's also the only guy ever to beat the G1 champion for the
Yeah,
briefcase.
like I said, he's got a hell of a
So
resume. He's
yeah,
not being disrespected by the company. He
no.
may be disrespected in his mind by the fans, but even then I'd have to argue because he does his job. He gets the fans riled up. Yeah,
And the
and
fans
better
have been
than,
behind him more often than not as well
yeah,
lately.
exactly. I mean, I guess if he wanted to
The only
say,
way the only way I could look at it and say that Jay White might have been disrespected is having it is if you look at the evil storyline.
yeah,
Where if you look at that and say, well, you've also pushed evil as kind of the leader of Bullet Club, so where does that actually leave me going forward? Well, it leaves you in a great spot because either you're the leader of Bullet Club or you get to face evil for the leadership of Bullet Club, or you get to break off and have another new faction going forward or something of that order. I mean,
yeah.
you're still in a great spot, Jay. So I don't get it personally. I mean, we'd have to like have like a Steve Austin conversation with him where they're actually getting to the very heart of it to see like where the hell his head is actually at,
Right.
like what he thinks should have been done differently so that he did not feel disrespected by NJPW or by the fans because I really don't get where he's
I,
coming from
yeah,
with that.
exactly. And that's why I said that was the one thing about his conference, and I thought about it, but I didn't really think about it until you just mentioned when you were breaking down, kind of the Jay White stuff. But he, I don't see that he was disrespected by NJPW at all. NJPW, the fans, anything like that. So for him, that's why I'm starting to think this is more storyline than anything, because it just doesn't feel like his thoughts of being disrespected is accurate.
No, I mean even when we talked about what happened at Supercard of Honor, I think if I'm if and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but what I remember is that we didn't actually say that White should have walked out of Supercard of Honor with the championship. We said
No,
why the hell did he beat Tanahashi for the title
right.
instead of just having Tanahashi versus Okada there, rather than having him drop it after win it and then drop it after one defense. It wasn't that we thought he was supposed to he should have been a long time reigning champion.
No,
So
no. I mean, and rarely ever is somebody in their first title run a long time champ.
right.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. So that's where I'm at with the whole Jay White stuff, and I think that I personally believe this is storyline, or like you said, maybe he's just done wrestling. But I would like to know why he feels like NJPW is disrespecting him.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. It's some kind of conversation with somebody. I mean, it's not going to be Steve Austin. I was being facetious about that,
Right.
but I mean, even if he was, talks to Kevin Kelly or goes on Chris Jericho's show or something, so that we, get some kind of perspective as to where he's coming from with this. I'd love to hear, his take on it as far as, why does he feel that way, and maybe it being heard publicly would give NGPW a chance too to just kind of talk to him and say, okay, well, here's why we did this. What can we do going forward to make you not feel that way? Because he really is somebody that is going if he really is done is going out at the top of his game and he is like a bright shining star in the business where he could really be something for years and years to come, like a major player.
Can you think of anybody else that has come in as a rookie? And I'm talking any company that has come into a company as basically a rookie. Because I know Excursion and everything, but when he comes back to NJPW, he's coming back as a rookie. But anybody in any company that's come in as a rookie, other than Okada and maybe Brock Lesnar, that has
I
had the
was gonna I was
kind of
gonna I was gonna say Lesnar.
success that Jay White has had. I mean, Okada clearly, and Lesnar. Lesnar was pushed to the moon right from the start. But I can't think of another rookie other than those three, or that have had any kind of success. I guess maybe Kurt Angle.
Kurt Angle's a good one. I think probably AJ Styles is a good one.
But AJ
um
wasn't, I mean, when AJ came into Impact as a rookie, yeah, he won a lower championship, but did he? Yeah, I guess he did. He did win the title before 2005. So yeah, you're right.
yeah, yeah, he won the world title within a couple of years of being there.
But was he considered a rookie because he had worked with WCW before then? Where
um
where
I would consider him a rookie.
okay,
I mean, he wasn't like super like a named, somebody that anybody would like. Yeah,
would
he
remember?
worked for WCW, but would you have remembered him working for WCW or appearing on an episode of Jacked or whatever the hell he was? He wrestled on for
Yeah, that's a
WWE.
good point.
It's and even there he was, even in WCW I think he was a jobber there. I don't think he was a guy that won
He was
matches.
worse. He was a tag team jobber.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. But yeah, I mean, other than okay, there's four. I can't think of anybody else that has had that kind of success where they got within 3 years they were that huge of a superstar.
Exactly. And so I mean I mean I guess I guess I have to really think about it. There's more than that. But that's what those are comes who comes to mind on the top of my head are those guys.
Yeah, and that's probably all there is. Just can't think of anybody else.
Wait. What about Honky Tonk Man?
Ugh. Was he a heavyweight title holder within 3 years?
No, but he was the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, and that's still a record.
I mean, plus I thought he came from somewhere else.
He probably did, but I think he came from Memphis or something, didn't he?
Yeah, so I mean, those territory days don't count, especially with WWF, because everybody that came in was something somewhere else.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was just trying to think out. I was just trying to think outside the box, I guess, a little bit there.
Because I mean, you could say, well, Hogan, because within a year of being, in the in WWF, he was a heavyweight champion, and then he was also, the second longest reigning champion ever, and still is. But ultimately, he was a mega star in AC in a I can't think of a AWA before then.
Right.
So I wouldn't count him, So I think those four that we talked about are the only four. And if anybody can think of anyone else, let us know. Comments. Let us know in the comments section. On our Twitters, wherever.
All right. So we're almost an hour into this
Jesus
show.
Christ.
So like 45 minutes into it. So, um, what were your top five Wrestle Kingdom matches?
Okay, if we're going solely Wrestle Kingdom,
Or
um,
do you want to go by the week? Go by the week.
I'd rather go by the week
Okay.
because I think that that will finally get us into the other three shows.
All right.
My I, I'm gonna reveal my first. Yeah, I'll just go 1 through 5. Omega Phoenix number one, no question. that Omega Phoenix number one. Takahashi or no, Shingo and uh, Cobb would be number two. O'Reilly and Finn Balor would be number three. Takahashi Ishimori would be number four, and number five would be Kota and White.
Okay. So you've got I honestly did not like the Bauer O'Reilly match that much.
I liked it better than anything else I saw. It's not going to go down as a match of the year for me, like the other four might, but I liked it better than anything else I saw.
You also didn't know see O'Reilly Balor won.
No,
So
I didn't.
and that colored my impression. Also having Kyle O'Reilly tap out pissed
Yeah,
me off. So
that's why it was as low as it was for me, was because he tapped out. But I loved the whole, quote unquote, broken jaw storyline that they were doing. I thought
gotcha.
that was well done. I liked the fact that it wasn't a typical move for move wrestling match. It wasn't a high flying wrestling match. It was two people that looked like they were having an MMA fight.
Yeah, and that's
And
how
I,
their first one was too.
yeah, and that part I liked. I liked how vicious O'Reilly was. I loved that moment when I like, because I've never seen anything like that. When we saw Kevin Owens do it with the fingertip, that was like, oh my God, that's great, amazing. And then to see Kyle O'Reilly do it by biting the middle rope was like, holy crap, I've never seen anything like that. And then to get kicked in the face for it
Hmm.
was I it just there were a couple of those standout moments where I was like, okay, great. Now, had we had anything better in any of the other previous shows, I don't think that would have made it. Or if I'd maybe seen Balor O'Reilly won, maybe I wouldn't have thought that way. But that's the way I thought watching the four shows.
All right, so we have the same number one. No surprise, basically my two favorite wrestlers on the planet, Kenny Omega and Ray Phoenix, are having a wrestling match. It's kind of
Right.
tough for them. It'd be tough for them not to steal the show for me, but these guys really went out and did something amazing out
Oh my
there.
God, that
The wrestling a TV match with commercials in there, and it still held my attention throughout. And
just the moves that they did. Some of the, I mean, how many Hurricane Ranas were in like the first 2 minutes? There was something like 60 of them. It was insanity. And then, watching Omega get dropped on his head
yeah,
from one of those Hurricane Ranas, then whatever that top rope Canadian Destroyer thing that Phoenix did, there
and
were,
that backflip into the like smoothly into a German suplex.
yeah,
That was incredible. Never seen that anything like that before. That's and then the V trigger into the hit the ground kip up Inzaguri right
and
away.
yeah, there were so many moves that I saw that I'm just like, my mouth dropped open. I couldn't
And then you
believe
get
what I was watching.
right, and then you've got and you and I have talked about this for years. So just so just so we're clear, I already had this as my match of the week, and then the presentation kept going,
Yep.
because we've always talked about we go from not necessarily bell to bell, but we go from the start of the presentation to the end of the presentation. So
And the
we have
start of the
that
presentation can actually be
we have so we have talked and you've talked about for weeks, and I've started to pay attention to Justin Roberts' introduction of Kenny
it's
Omega. But
amazing.
this one was just fucking phenomenal. So you got that. You've got Phoenix coming out as well, and then you've got the very end um, where you've got this incredible moment where you've got the Good Brothers appearing. You've got and you've got the Bucks kind of arguing with Kenny like, "What are you doing?" And then a couple of guys come down to help. I think it was the Varsity Blondes come down to help try to help Death Triangle, or try to help Phoenix, I should say, and then the Bucks like look and super kick them, and then you got that ending in the middle of the ring with the Good Brothers and Kenny and the Bucks together in the same rings for the first time since Wrestle Kingdom, since New Year's Dash after Wrestle Kingdom 10. So we're talking about over 5 years now, like 5 years, actually exactly 5 years and a day, I believe, from the last time they were all in the ring together, and it's just that moment where they all do the Wolfpack sign symbol together, the elite symbol together, and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened?
Right. My favorite
Such
part
a
of the
such a wave of emotions all the way through that last half hour of Impact. There's no way that could not be my favorite of the week.
my favorite part of that whole presentation was Tamatanga on Twitter.
Oh, what was he doing?
He came on afterwards and said, "It's not the Bullet Club without a Samoan." That's my favorite part of the whole thing.
Well, they have a Samoan on their roster too, so maybe
Yeah,
he'll be joining.
yeah, that's what I was thinking too. But that was my favorite part of the whole presentation with Tamatanga.
That's hilarious. Um, my number two was also Cobb versus Shingo, which
Oh, Jesus.
you, you know, and I talked about this on when Imp and I did our Wrestle Kingdom aftershock, where I said, you know, the the last four matches of Wrestle Kingdom Night 2 made it feel like an actual Wrestle Kingdom show.
Mm.
And it made it feel, and it was the first time I had felt since Wrestle Kingdom 10 that way. I mean, that it had the same feeling at Wrestle
Yep.
Kingdom 10 where I watched that match and I'm like, holy shit, did these guys just steal the show from the main event the same way that Shibata and Ishii did at
Well, and
Wrestle
I
Kingdom 10?
messaged you right
Yeah.
after I saw it and said that was the best never match I've seen since Shibata Ishii.
Yep, I agree, and I really felt like that had the chance to steal the show, and it ended up like just barely to me squeaking out um, White versus Ibushi, and part of that was White and Ibushi, even though I think they did, I still think they did have a 5-star match. I did feel like that spot kind of in like with like 5 minutes to go where Ibushi hits the Phoenix Splash, felt like a triumphant soaring moment that should have ended the match, and instead they have Gato, excuse me, pull Red Shoes out of the ring, and I'm like, that just got way too cute for me. So
Yeah,
and so I mean, I think they gained a lot of it back by the end with those with the way like White just got his ass kicked with those knee strikes from Ibushi, but I still feel like they were at a point where they weren't gonna beat this the 7-star match between Okada and Omega, but they were getting to that point where they were heading into 6-star territory, and I think that little spot with the Phoenix Splash cost them that for me personally. So I mean, I still think it was the second best match of the show and the third best match of the week, but it went to the from where it could have possibly been, one of the best matches I've ever seen, and I know a lot of people still feel that way, to where it just unfortunately for it just isn't that 5-star territory.
right. And for me, I think what really took away from me, and like you'd mentioned just now, um, I've always been really big on presentation, and I look at the whole story, start to finish. Like
Yep.
this White versus Coda story, which added to the my enjoyment of this match, started last year at Wrestle Kingdom. So it's not like I'm not when I'm watching the quality of this match, I'm not just taking into account the match. I'm taking into account everything, including the aftermath, including the announcers, including Coda's current story. And there's a couple of things that bother me that it lowered this rating for me. One, Sonata. What gives Sonata the right, other than the fact that he's pulling a Kenta and just coming out and saying, "I'm next challenger"? Where has Sonata earned his challenge? Um, Second, uh,
Well, they had already talked about earlier in the show how Evil versus Sonata, although it wasn't announced that way, was basically a de facto number one contenders
but they
match.
also said that the night before about Osprey and Okada.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
Okay.
they said the winner of this is going to be next in line. So that's part the Sonata, that part of the presentation bothered me. Um, the whole deity thing, like it was almost too much. I don't mind it, fine. They'd said it a couple times night one about Coda becoming a god and all this stuff, and but the way that Chris, what's his name, the announcer, really hammered that, like he hammered that in for the entire match. It was like every other line he said was talking about Koto becoming a deity, and you can't defeat a god like that and all this stuff. And it just, to me, it just got to be too much. That's a heel tactic. That's something I would have expected out of White, not Kota. Um, and then the other
Well,
part.
I guess I can see where you're coming from. I think on the other hand, this is something that Ibushi's been building for the last 2 years too. I
Yeah,
mean, he talked about that when he won G1 Climax the first time. He was the one that came up with the double gold to kind of ascend to that place. For years and that's the year before that is when he first invented the Kamigoye during that G1, and that was to approach God because his two favorite, the two guys that he had always looked up to, Shinsuke Nakamura and Hiroshi Tanahashi, he has seen as God. So he was trying to ascend to their level. So when he says he has now become God, he doesn't necessarily mean it,
right.
literally like he is a god, but he's ascended to the same place now that his two heroes, Tanahashi and Shinsuke Nakamura, had ascended to in the
And
past.
I get that, and I understand that, and I understood that. My problem wasn't so much the fact that he said it or even the announcer said it. My fact was that I was disappointed in it was how much they went with it. How much Chris was, I mean, it was literally every other sentence.
Gotcha.
It got to be so much that he said it that every time he did, I cringed. Um, and it was just overdone. That I don't have a problem with the fact that he said it. I understood his reasoning behind saying it, everything, but the fact that they overdid it is what bothered me. And then the third thing that bugged me, and this has been bugging me about this little thing for probably the better part of the year since he started doing it, was his whole hulking up and going to this dark place. Again, wouldn't have a problem with it if it actually won him a match occasionally. Or if he at least got the upper hand. But he'll go through this little hulking up moment. Oh, he's in a dark place now. He's gonna do some evil, bad things. And it usually only lasts for a couple minutes and it's midway through the match. If it had actually ever led to something, I think I would be okay with it a little bit more, but it never leads to anything. It's kind of like when Cena broke out that springboard stunner, and it ended up being just a transition move and not a finisher. It was a letdown, and to me, this whole Dark Coda thing is a letdown.
I can see where you're coming from with that. But I do also think that, and there may be something I'm not remembering, but it seems like there's always a spot there where he's in that dark place, but he goes too far, and either no, actually both things usually happen where Red Shoes or whoever the referee happens to be for his matches, I think it's almost always Red Shoes. Will step in the way, or he's trying to pull him back, and there's been times where he just has just refused to count because of Coda not listening to him and being so brutal. And then usually it also leads to him, being in that dark space and he's gone too far and the referee gets shoved aside, and then cheating is involved that takes him out of it. So to me it's always been contained in that story as to why it doesn't go farther than it should, and it's mostly because Coda is just completely out of control by that point. So he's just disregarding everything that's going on around him, and he just doesn't see anybody except for his opponent, and that ends up leading to his downfall in that part of the match.
And see that's fine, but without it actually getting him a victory, without it actually turning the tides or um, you know, moving the match to a point where he gains the upper hand because of it, with his character and as beloved as he is and everything about him, there's no point to have that as part of his repertoire. It just there's just no point. It doesn't really advance the story. It doesn't advance the story of the match because it's just a throwaway moment. It or am I not seeing it? Is it somehow advancing his character that I don't understand?
Not necessarily his character. I do think I do think it ends. I think it would work better in the Never division than it does in the heavyweight championship division.
Maybe.
I think I think I see where you're coming from, and I kind of agree with you. I guess it's um, and I think I do have kind of the same feelings as you do about it. I just kind of see like why why it doesn't end up leading to that spot.
Right. And I mean I see your point too. I feel like there's just it's one of those little things that there's just no reason for it to be.
Right.
And I just, especially when you're pushing him as a good guy and all this stuff, there's no reason for it. Absolutely no reason for it. And that's what bothers me about it.
I hate to be that guy, but we're kind of like pushing to the time limit I
Holy
thought we'd
crap.
be at. Um,
Sorry about that. I
so no,
guess
that's okay.
we had more to talk about than I actually even thought.
Yeah. I think the other show just lasted longer than we expected it to as well.
Yeah,
So,
that too, yeah.
um, and I do want to say that before we head out of here that I did coming into the week, New Year's Evil was my number two anticipated show behind night two of Wrestle Kingdom um and I for a couple of reasons I didn't feel it lived up to that. One of them was I didn't think the heavyweight championship match was as good as I wanted it to be, and it had the result I didn't want, even though I kind of should have expected it because it was Balor's first match back in 3 months. Um, but also I really feel like they pulled like a terrible bait and switch with that fight pit match. Because they didn't tell us until halfway through the show that the fight pit match wasn't going to happen. We were supposed to get Timothy Thatcher versus Tommaso Ciampa in the fight pit,
Hmm.
and they didn't tell us until an hour into the show that the match wasn't going to happen because of a minor injury to Timothy Thatcher.
And
And I thought that was bullshit. That was one of the that was the match I was number two looking forward to on that card.
the other thing that, and we still got to hear your last two matches of the week, but the other part about New Year's Evil and why I felt like it was the fourth best show that I watched this week was the whole Dexter Loomis thing, especially the intro. It just was weird. And I get it, his character and everything, but why would you have somebody host that never talks?
Yeah, it was dumb. It was just, I guess it was just for that one moment with the way.
Yeah, it just, that part weird was weird. I didn't like the fact that other than, there being a heavyweight title match, did any part of this show feel special? It felt like a regular show.
Well, the last woman standing match, I think was really well done as well. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I agree with you. It's just, and I think a lot of that was just that they had that filler. They had to do that filler stuff because of the fight pit match not happening.
Yeah, possibly.
Um, as far as my two favorite match, my other two matches of the week would have been Taiji Ishimori versus Hiromu Takahashi, which I thought was amazing, and I
Hmm.
thought Ishimori proved that he's probably that that he might be I think overall, I think Takahashi is better. He's more exciting. He's got a better personality. He's more dynamic. But I think that Taiji Ishimori might be the actual best junior heavyweight in the world, and I think he showed it in this match.
Hmm.
He was so smooth in all the transitions and leading that match. That match was phenomenal. And then the main event of night two or night one of Wrestle Kingdom was my fifth, which was
Naito versus
Kota
Naito.
Ibushi versus Tetsuya Naito.
Yeah, and one other disappointment that I had with Wrestle Kingdom was the fact that the Empire didn't get a single win.
Yeah, that sucked.
I mean, here's this brand new faction that you're trying to push, and not one of them got a win.
And Bullet Club only got one too. Bullet Club had a couple of bad nights. They only
Yeah,
got one victory.
that is true. That is true. And then, quickly, and we probably don't have to spend much time on it because I have a feeling that a lot of yours are going to be the same. But looking back at 2020 alone, not all the stuff that we watched, I would have to say my five top wrestlers. Number one, Omega. I can't argue anything that Omega's done this year. I've been saying it all year long. It's just a pleasure to watch him. His arc, with the tag team titles and then to become the heavyweight title and turn heel and his entrance, it just everything about Omega was on point this year. Um, Second would be Hiromu Takahashi. Every match he did seemed like a five-star match. No matter who he was against, heavyweight, junior, didn't matter. He went out there and put on a five-star match every time. Osprey would,
That's where my and that I told you earlier this year that or earlier today that I had like a really super debate with myself for the last couple of days about would I really elevate Takahashi above Omega considering everything that he had done this year? And I couldn't quite do it, but I tell you what, man, that match that he had against El Desperado
yep.
in the finals of Best in Super Juniors almost elevated him above Omega for me. Almost.
And if you
It's
look at
it's just
everything
it's
he
it's
did,
just a hair's breadth.
and if you look at everything he did through the Super J Cup, through the or not Super J Cup, through
Best
Best of
Super
Super Juniors,
Juniors,
and
and he challenged, and he was he challenged as the junior heavyweight champion for the heavyweight championship.
yep, and he, granted he lost to Ishimori earlier in the year, but other than that, he put on that classic with Osprey at the beginning of the year. And that leads me to number three, and the reason I'm rushing through this because I know we're pressed for
You got to
time,
go.
but
Yeah,
would be Osprey.
yeah.
Osprey is my number three. So that, that's my top three. Here's where things might get a little wonky. My number four is Jay White. I know we lost a lot of Jay White because of the COVID outbreak and all that stuff, but I can't think of another wrestler that I anticipated and was more excited to see again. And when you look at not only his accomplishments, but just the man, there's not a better heel on the planet than Jay White. Uh, and I just think he continued everything he's been doing and pushed it to a new level this year. And then my fifth and final would be Roman Reigns because he's another guy that just kind of took everything he did to a brand new level, and now he's probably the only interesting thing in WWE outside of Kevin Owens.
I think you just broke my heart with that last one.
Well,
But
I when I sat down and thought about it, I can't think of anybody else in any other company that I would have put as having that kind of year, start to finish, where he became the talk of the world.
okay. So I'm gonna go. So I think your number three with Osprey is great, and I think that probably if we had seen Osprey all year, he probably would have been our number one.
Yeah,
But I think that I think Omega's got to beat out Takahashi simply because he wrestled pretty much the whole year. Takahashi didn't get that opportunity. That's not his fault, but he didn't get that opportunity. And same thing with Will Osprey. So yeah, I think Osprey is three is also great. I'm going to have Kota Ibushi as my number four. Because I think he's been great everything he's done. He was great in the tag division. He was great in the heavyweight singles division. And even though he lost both matches at Lester's Wrestle Kingdom, they were both brilliant matches. And he had a fantastic G1 as well. I mean, he won it again, but he had a fantastic G1. So I mean, I don't see any negatives to having Kota Ibushi in my top five. Um,
and I've
number
discussed it so many times throughout the last 6 months that you all know my feelings.
and number five. Wow. Yeah, you're right. It's tough to name a fifth one here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I guess number five. Who would I have? Um, wow. I really don't know. Number five. I might go with Darby Allin. I think Darby Allin's had a great year. I think he's definitely the breakout star of 2020. And just in lieu of having anybody else I really want to throw in that spot, I think I'm probably going to go with Darby Allin.
See, and with Jay White being number four and number five, outside of those top three, it was really, really difficult because we didn't have full years from people. We didn't
Yeah,
have, we had so many different character changes and things like that. And that's why, and Jay White being one of my favorites. And like I said, I've never anticipated a return of somebody or felt as excited to see somebody back on my screen as I did Jay White.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's fair. I mean, I guess I really would have to really sit down and think about who would be. Yeah, Jay White's a great choice too. So I really I guess would have to think about who did I enjoy more this year, Jay White or Darby Allin, and I think it probably actually is Jay White. Now that you bring that up again here.
that number five, though, it could have been evil. He had a hell of a year.
Yeah,
It like you said, could have been Darby Allin. It could have been, I mean, Jesus, look at the year Orange Cassidy had. You know, he's had a year right up there with Darby Allin. The only difference was Darby won a championship.
yeah,
Um, you know, I mean, that number five spot could have gone either way. I think those top four, especially those top three, you can't argue against. For me, Jay White at four is unarguable. Number five could have been five or six different people.
yeah. And I've got Ibushi above White, so that's just me.
Yeah, and see, I went with and like I said, I've been talking for 6 months. My reason for not having Ibushi, I felt like he had
Right.
a down year. So,
I know. All right.
but
Well, um, so next week we'll talk about Genesis, I suppose, and whatever else comes up this coming week. Oh yeah, and we have the second night of New Year's Smash as well.
oh yeah, which looks to be good.
Yeah.
I want to see Darby versus Brian Cage. I want to see how much Darby can get ragdolled.
Why don't you hit our plug so we can get out of here?
All right, guys. Patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. Head there. Um, we're actually doing something. I've got quite a bit of free content up there. In fact, stuff you can listen all the way back to September. Usually, I only have the last month's worth of shows up there because, well, we're a topical wrestling we're topical with our wrestling. But I've left some freebies up there going back to all the way back to September. And the show that we missed, well, that I didn't correct settings for, and you probably didn't hear the whole thing of Dark Phoenix. That was a YouTube show that we did for our pop culture. That's going to be up for free on our Patreon for a little bit as well. So if I can't get it uploaded to YouTube, you'll be able to hear it there. But patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor, you get a chance to listen to everything we've done, including a lot of exclusive stuff, going all the way back to our original shows back in 2016. Um, and then YouTube, of course, if you're listening, hit the like button, subscribe button, ring the notification bell. Leave us a comment in the, below about who your wrestler of the year is, match of the year. If you can think of anybody else that has had a 3-year run, initial 3-year run anywhere near Jay White, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, and AJ Styles. And then, of course, Twitter. I'm at Regi Co-op. He's at Zanman LOP. Hit us up on there as well. Did I lose you, Shane? Or are you stuck on mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay, I was double muted.
you.
All right. So, I was just thinking that we didn't mention this on our other show, but do you have time to watch some more Doom Patrol this week?
Yeah, I should be able to. I
Okay.
could probably squeeze it in. I mean, we're gonna do what, 3 episodes?
3 episodes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So let's do episodes 7, 8, and 9
Okay.
of Doom Patrol this week, and we talk about that next Sunday as well.
Yeah, and we'll probably have a shorter, shorter week next week because we went off on the X-Men stuff in our original show, and then there was just so much to talk about.
Right. They did, and I did also mention to you in text yesterday that they've also added the animated The Dark Knight Returns to HBO Max. So I think I'd like to cover that at some point too, but I think we should probably finish up Doom Patrol before we move on to something else pop culture.
Before we move into another series, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is actually a 2-part movie, but I still think we should probably finish up Doom Patrol before we move on to anything else pop culture wise.
At some point, I want to watch Nosferatu too.
Nosferatu.
Remember we did
Oh,
that?
the Joe Hill series?
Yeah, because remember we did Lock and Key earlier this year?
Yep.
And that was just phenomenal. And you mentioned Nosferatu being similar.
Well, they're both Joe Hill
Right.
stories, so
So,
that's where the similarity is. But yeah, I mean I wouldn't say it's a great show, but I think it's a decent show. I mean obviously clearly the book is better, but
I don't read.
yeah, I know.
If it's not
I
subtitles,
know
it doesn't get read in my house.
I know. I'm very close to finishing up Jason Aaron's Thor run that we started covering years ago.
Oh, Jesus. That's right. Wow. Yeah, we've kind of stopped and started a few things, haven't we?
We have. So
But all right. So I guess that's all I've got.
that's all we've got. We'll try to do better next time. This is Shane saying long days, pleasant nights, and Jeff saying
Goodbye. All right, guys.